Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to be continuing work on the 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic, and today we've cleaned up all of these parts you see on the bench here, and we're going to be fitting these up. However, it's not going to be as easy as it may seem. So let's go over the parts on the bench here. We have here the toolbox and rear fenders, which on a 1960 Rideamatic were actually an optional extra. As standard, the tractor didn't come with these parts, which was actually quite a common thing for tractors of this era, kind of wheel horse, early roundheads like an RJ or Cub Cadets had similar things where these didn't come as standard, but you could purchase them afterwards, which actually brings us to something we noticed on the back here. So if we place this where this would be bolted on, which is around there, you can see it has this tab here, which acts as kind of a splash guard or just a cover for the chain, drive chain below, as you can see. But for models where people hadn't bought this optional extra, Bolens had this kind of guard that was kind of a curved shape that was riveted on here instead of having that tab, seeing as they didn't have the whole toolbox arrangement. However, on this one, you can kind of see a change in the paint in a kind of rectangular tab area there, and kind of a small rust line as well, indicating that possibly in the past this actually had one of those tabs on the back, which could mean that the fenders and toolbox were purchased afterwards and were kind of added on as an aftermarket part, and this originally didn't come with them, which is some interesting history into the machine. And now if we move on to here, we've got the seat, which we've brought up a lot of the original yellow paint on both the top and the bottom, so we're quite happy with that. We have the original seat bolt, which is in very, very bad condition. However, we've got a replacement for that, so that's pretty easy. Here we have the foot pegs, which are the only parts that we haven't cleaned up, but that's a 2-minute job because they're so small. And this one is actually bent, which if I put that back to back with the other one, you can kind of see how it's bent. So that's going to need straightening out in the press. However, that's not the only thing that needs to be straightened out. This is the seat bracket, and if I kind of hold it as it would be mounted on the tractor, you can see that actually is bent backwards quite badly, and that needs to be held flat so that the seat sits flat on there. So that's really not very good, and that is some really thick metal to have to bend as well. So we've got a lot of jobs to use the press on today, and that is going to be the main challenge for today. We have a number of these seat supports lined up here. This is the one from this tractor. This is one that we got in a group or a kind of batch of Rideamatic parts that we collected a while ago. And this is the one from our parts tractor. Now, as you can see, they're all at different angles. And we actually weren't sure what angle was correct, because when we searched up pictures of these to kind of see what others looked like, all the pictures we found kind of featured different angles that could have indicated any of these. So we made a post on the Rideamatic group, or Bolens Ride-a-matic group on Facebook, which we're a member of, and is a very useful group if you have any troubles with these tractors. I highly recommend joining a group such as that for any machinery, really. But the responses we got were that the seats should be kind of flat, like the one on the parts tractor, and that these ones were more kind of indicated a lot of load on them before, and that they've bent during use previously. So what we could do is just use the one from the parts tractor. However, that is badly pitted and rusted, so we are very reluctant to do that. So what we're going to do is use our one from this tractor and try and bend it to be correct, and use the one from our parts tractor as a pattern to help us get the angles on the joints, or the angles here, as they should be. We've spent some time comparing these two brackets now, and if we look at the angles, the kind of curves at the bottom aren't too dissimilar, and if we compare the ones at the top as well, they're not too bad either, which leads us to the conclusion that most of the bending is in this portion here, which should be straight. If we get this straight edge here, you can see that that is a long straight edge on the one that we believe to be correct, whereas if we put it up to this, it's just a big curve effectively. So that's where we're going to start with our correcting. Now we're going to be using the press, so we need to get this set up in there. But a bit of a disclaimer, very much would not recommend doing this at home, because obviously that is very thick metal, which can be quite springy, and if done wrong, we could end up wearing that. So definitely not a how-to video here, but we're going to do it as safely as possible and try and get that set up in the press so we can start to take the curve out of what should be this straight edge. We have the seat support in the press now, and we've got this flat block to make sure that we're not kind of pushing down in just one area, spreads the load a bit. And obviously with this press, we're never going to be able to get it to kind of press down and hold there. It will spring back, but we're going to try and do as much as possible and see how far we get. So that first push moved it quite a bit actually, and it didn't kind of recoil much when we let it off. So we're going to repeat this process in a couple of other places as we are now, in the hopes that we can straighten this out quite quickly. There we are, that's the second place done. As you saw there, it didn't actually recoil very much, and we can move on to the next place. Turns out that second pressing point was all that we needed, and as you can see now, our seat stand is actually the same profile as the one we were using as a pattern, so we are very happy with that now, and that was 100 times easier than we thought it would be, and no one got hurt in the process, so that's an added bonus. Yeah, we're happy with the shape of that now, but that isn't all of the press work we wanted to do today. Obviously, as I said before, we've got this foot peg to do now, which we can use a pretty similar process, and it'll be easier because we're just trying to press it flat rather than achieve a profile. So we'll go get this set up in the press and bring you along with us. The foot peg is in the press now, and I'm not sure how badly this is going to kind of spring back when we press it, but we'll have to see and just give this a go. I'll release that now. We might have to move it along a bit to get another part of it. It did spring back a tiny bit, but not much. So if I just... Sorry for blocking the view, but you can kind of see what I've done there. I've just moved it along to make sure that other part of it is straight. That's not straight in the press though. There we are. That's good, I believe. And bring this back down to it. There we are. Release this again. And what we can now do is test the profile of that against the other one. Looks like that bracket might need a bit of straightening up actually, but it's getting there. As expected, the foot peg kind of sprung back a bit. So just off camera now, we set up these kind of two tube parts, put the foot peg on top of it and then pressed in the center, which meant we kind of pushed beyond where we wanted it. Then it sprung back to being straight, so we're happy with that now. We've now set it up in this kind of V-block setup that we made probably years ago for some other random use, but we're going to use it now to close up the angle in the foot peg there so that the end isn't pointing downwards when we mount it on the tractor. So let's have a go at this. And probably now have to take that off and check. We've finally finished these foot pegs, which is quite interesting actually, how it took us quite a while to get these right, and it only took 2 pushes of the press to get the seat bracket where we wanted it, but that's sorted now, and we've cleaned these up a bit, gotten off the worst of the surface rust and stuff off of there. So we've got all of our parts back on the bench now, ready to reassemble some stuff before they go back on the tractor, because we kind of want to connect the seat to the seat support, the toolbox to the fenders before they go on there. So we'll start with the seat and the seat support. And one issue with these tractors that we've noticed from using our other Rideamatics is that when you put the seat on and bolt it on, usually there's a bit of pivot room either way like that, which gets quite annoying for me at times. Which, to fix that on our 1962 Rideamatic, we put another bolt in there, which isn't standard, so we've gone down a different route on this one, which is that we've made this, which is just a thin piece of rubber, which we put on the back of there, and with that on there, or on there, I can't remember which way around it went, that way I think. So with that on there, that will then reduce the amount that wiggles around and allows us to tighten it up a bit more, in theory. So I will do this first. I do need to keep my hand under there. Push that down there, trying to centralise this rubber part as well while we're at it. Now we're going to put the bolt through the centre hole. It's actually on the front hole on the 62 Rideamatic, but I've definitely gotten taller since we did that. Trying to centre this rubber part is being quite irritating, but there we are. Guarantee it will move when I put this down though. There we are. And now new spring washer and wing nut, thank you. And hopefully that rubber part will help us to keep this straight. There we are. That's as tight as I can get it probably. If I hold the base, I can't get the two to move independently, so I think our rubber idea has worked there. And you can see the seat now actually sits flat rather than tilting backwards. So that shows kind of the change we made on the seat support. Next thing to do is mount the fenders to the toolbox, which we've got all new spring washers and washers to go on these fixings. And the thing to remember on these is that they aren't kind of universal, they are sided as it were. So it matters which way around you put them on. And from looking back at old pictures, the shorter side faces forwards. So this one will go on this side, seeing as this is the front with the chain guard. So we'll do this quickly off camera and come back to you in a second. We now have the fenders attached. We did have to do a bit of panel beating to get them to fit, because there was actually a big gap between the toolbox and the fender when we first fitted them up, which we weren't happy with, but we're happy now, so that's all good. We've oiled everything that we won't be able to get to when these two parts are put together, which I will do now by sliding this into that slot there. and that's kind of how they mount on the tractor, which I will now take these over to, which these are actually surprisingly heavy, more heavy than you would think. Go over to the back of the tractor here, and that will mount somewhere around there. However, what we've got to do is line up the seat support with the toolbox with the chassis, which is going to be quite difficult, and then we've got to get washers and nuts on it when someone put the tow hitch and attachment lift stuff on. Don't know who did that, but it's quite unhelpful for this job. But I'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully with that all lined up and bolted on. We've turned the tractor around now, and everything on the rear end is bolted up properly. And we turned it around so you could kind of see how the tractor is starting to look more like a tractor again now. But that was very fiddly, so I'm glad we cut the camera there. Took us quite a while to get those bolts tightened up. But the last thing to do today is to put on the foot pegs. So we're not being too scientific about this, but we're just using that angle meter to make sure that we kind of put both of them on at the same angle, which if I just get this close to done up, I will then choose the angle, which we were kind of looking at about 35 degrees, somewhere around there. Oh. See, I may be getting too scientific with this, but I just want both sides to kind of look even, which that is about 35 degrees. We'll head round to the other side now and repeat the process here. And those rear fenders do look very shiny with that oil spray on them. I'm sure they'll dull down a tiny bit as the stuff dries. And there we are. That's both of the foot pegs on, and that is today's work done pretty much. And this is definitely shaping up, and we're ticking off most of the jobs now. Speaking of jobs, I think we are now waiting on the engine parts, because we need to get that going and in, and then after that we can progress more, but everything is waiting on the engine jobs at the moment. But that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.